Well, hello, everybody. Hope you're doing well. Thank you again so much for joining us for another DRC Daily Devotional reading from our Blue Devotional book by Chris Tigran. All right, January 16th, Colossians 3:15 says, "Let the peace of Christ rule in your hearts." It'd be easy just to skip straight to devotional. Let's just ponder that for a moment. Let the peace of Christ rule in our hearts. There's something to be said about pondering that. All right. He writes this: I could feel myself spiraling downward and still seemed unable to stop the momentum. Fear, hopelessness, and bitter thoughts swirled inside my head. I fought hard to remind myself of truth, but then my thoughts would slip back into negative assumptions because they seemed truer. I was stuck until I appealed to Jesus out loud, lifted up my voice in worship, and contended for truth with audible words. In a little while, the downward spiral was broken. Those murky thoughts are not a sign of the presence. Being mired in despair, fear, and bitterness is evidence of not being filled with God's thoughts. The Spirit doesn't seem to bring those kinds of gifts. In fact, He dispels them. When the peace of Christ is ruling in our hearts, attitudes like anxiety and discouragement cannot remain. They are contrary to the culture of His kingdom. The presence gives us peace, assurance, and strength. How do you get that peace, assurance, and strength when negative thoughts swirl around in your head? How do you experience the signs of His presence when you're stuck in something else? Acknowledging that your thoughts don't reflect the culture of the kingdom is a start, but it helps to use your voice. Call out the name of the King or sing a worship song to Him, even when worship is the furthest thing from your mind. That's where the word contending comes, forcing yourself into something that you might not feel like doing in the moment. Invoke the presence of Jesus, and the darkness begins to flee. There's a reason this passage about the peace of Christ goes on to suggest hymns and psalms and spiritual songs. Vocalizing truth and worship invites God's presence, and His presence changes the atmosphere. Yeah, let the peace of Christ rule in your heart, but then the verse goes on to talk about singing, suggesting hymns and psalms and spiritual songs. Again, vocalizing truth and worship invites God's presence, and His presence will change the atmosphere, at least the attitude of your own heart. So a good prayer for today: Jesus, may your peace rule in my heart. When my thoughts spiral down, pull me up. Hear me call, answer my appeals, accept my praise, and let your presence change my heart. Yeah, but it needs to be fought for. And that means, like I said earlier, doing something you might not feel like doing and saying things out loud, praising God out loud. And one of the reasons we worship on a Sunday morning is just to kind of make us aware of the opportunities and songs to worship on our own. And it's an awesome thing when you find yourself humming or singing the songs that we sing on a Sunday during the course of the week. So, all right. Yeah, worship songs are a resource. All right, take care. God bless. Bye.